Will counsel stipulate to the presence of all of the jurors?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Judge.
Thank you. Attorney McGinnis.
Your Honor, the state calls Kristen Maydell.
You could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Kristen Maydell, KRISTENMADEL.
And your affiliation?
I work at the forensic lab.
Ma'am, you may be seated. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Maydell, who employs you?
The State of Connecticut Forensic Science Laboratory.
Where's the Forensic Science Laboratory located?
It's located at 278 Colony Street in Meriden, Connecticut.
How long have you worked for the State Police Forensic Laboratory?
Next week will be 20 years.
What is your position at the lab?
I am currently a Forensic Science Examiner 2 in the DNA unit.
What are your duties at the laboratory?
My main duties are to extract DNA from items of evidence that may contain biological stains or material. I perform analyses. I develop a DNA profile when possible, write reports, and testify in court when necessary. I also am a supervisor in the DNA unit, so I supervise 2 FSC1s or Forensic Science Examiner 1s within the unit on their daily duties. I am the quality control coordinator for the DNA unit also, which means that I make sure that all the reagents and consumables that we use in our DNA testing process are checked before they're put into use for casework. And I'm also the contact person for missing persons cases that require DNA testing.
I'm going to hand you several exhibits that have been marked for identification as states 18 through 28. I'm just going to show you States Exhibit 18 first. What is States Exhibit 18?
This is my CV.
And I have provided a copy of that to Attorney Shaw and move it into evidence at this point.
Could I just see which one it is, please? It's referenced by number, so if I could just look at the... No objection.
That states 18.
It is, Judge.
States 18 will be admitted as a full exhibit.
Assuming one individual, the DNA profile from item 101S1 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from a swabbing of the electric toothbrush than if it originated from an unknown individual.
We can call up State Police Exhibit number 41. Photograph of that.
Well, Your Honor, I note that the witness skipped the last sentence of her finding on that particular item. I just ask that you read the remaining sentence.
Well, Attorney McGinnis, is there another sentence that was not read from the conclusion?
I'm unclear, Judge. I'm assuming he's referring to everyone being eliminated? Everyone else being
The court
eliminated?
does not know because the court does not have the exhibit.
So these results that we're going through now are consistent with the profile of the that you obtained from the toothbrush being 100 billion times more likely to be the source of these profiles. Is that correct?
versus an unknown profile.
Right. And everyone else has been eliminated. These results are all the same, correct?
Correct, so far.
If we can call up a photograph of State Police Exhibit 41. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, A18, KM positive, seized from the scene, and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as item 108. Were these results the same as your previous answer?
Yes.
We could call up State Police Exhibit number 45. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, Center Bay, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 109. Is the results of this test the same?
Yes.
If we could call up State Police number 48. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, Center Bay, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 112. Were the results here the same?
Yes.
If we could call up State Police Exhibit 59. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, garage, 2014 Land Rover, left side of the hood, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 118. Were the results of this the same?
Yes.
If we could call up Exhibit 60. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, garage, 2014 Land Rover, left front corner of bumper, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services as submission 119. Were the results here the same?
Yes.
If we could call up State Police photograph 61. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, garage, 2014 Land Rover, exterior side of left front door, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 8. Were the results of the analysis here the same? And that's in DNA Sup 1 and Sup 9.
Yes.
If we can call up State Police Exhibit 62. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the garage, 2014 Land Rover, exterior side, left rear door, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 121. Were the results of this test the same?
Yes.
If we can call up State Police Exhibit 63. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, 2014 Land Rover, left rear fender, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 120. Were the results of this test the same?
Yes.
If we can call up State Police Exhibit 64. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think we have a photograph of 64. State Police Exhibit 64 was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive seized from the scene, east wall of garage, north of door to mudroom. Were the results of that test the same? Submission 101, were the results of this the same? This is from DNA sub 7 and 10.
You said number 110?
101.
101. Correct, yes.
Okay. If we could call up State Police Exhibit 14. This was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, KM positive, seized from the scene, kitchen sink, faucet spout, and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 5. Can you let us know what the results were of this? This is from DNA sub 1 and 9.
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 5S1, being a mixture of 2 contributors with at least one of them being male. Assuming 2 contributors, the DNA profile from item 5S1 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and 1 unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown individuals. Assuming 2 contributors, the DNA profile from item 5S1 is at least 4.3 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fotis doulos and 1 unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown individuals. Michelle Troconis is eliminated as a contributor to the DNA profile from item 5S1.
And directing your attention now to DNA supplemental report number 9, did you reanalyze this profile and assume that the profile from the toothbrush was a contributor?
Yes, again, knowing from this first report that it was a 2-person mixture and it looked like a mixture of the parents of the children, I went and created a new hypothesis to make that second contributor more discriminating. So I ran the children all against that first deconvolution of the 2-person mixture in order to determine who had the highest likelihood ratio between the toothbrush and the 5 children. So then I could then assume one of them and make a comparison to that second person. So after I did that, the toothbrush had the highest likelihood ratio as being a contributor. And when you assume somebody on a profile, it increases the likelihood ratios of true contributors, but it will decrease the likelihood ratio of non-contributors. So it is a scientifically sound conclusion to do. So after I did that, then I made my conclusions in supplemental 9.
And what were the conclusions?
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 5S1, being a mixture of 2 contributors with one of them being male. The source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush is assumed to be a contributor to the DNA profile from item 5S1. Assuming 2 contributors, where the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush is one of the contributors, the DNA profile from 5S1 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fotis doulos and the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush than if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and 1 unknown individual. Petros doulos, Konstantin doulos, Christiane doulos, C. Noel doulos, Theodore doulos, Laura Almeida, and Pavel Gumini are eliminated as contributors to the DNA profile from 5S1.
So all the other known profiles that you had, including the defendant, were eliminated. Is that correct?
Yes, after I assumed the toothbrush as a contributor to the profile, the children are eliminated and cannot be the second contributor.
If we can call up State Police Exhibit 40. And this was identified as 2 swabs of a blood-like stain, A15 KM positive, seized from the scene, North Bay, subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services as submission 107. And this is found in DNA Supplemental Reports 7 and 10 for your benefit, Ms. Maydell. What were the results of the analysis here?
S1, you said?
Yes.
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 107S1 being a mixture of 2 contributors. Single female individual, assuming one individual, the DNA profile from item 128S1 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush than if it originated from an unknown individual. And everyone else is eliminated.
And if we can bring up State Police Exhibit 317. No, okay, I apologize. Submission, or State Police Exhibit 317 was identified as 2 swabs from Area B from the Chevy Suburban and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 129. Same results?
Yes.
State Police Exhibit 318, which was identified as 2 swabs from Area C of the Chevy Suburban and designated as submission 130. Same results?
Yes.
State Police Exhibit 99 is identified as 2 swabs taken of the top half of the steering wheel and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services as submission number 12. And for your benefit, Ms. Maydell, this is in reports 1 and 9. What were the results?
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 12S1 being a mixture of 2 contributors. Assuming 2 contributors, the DNA profile from item 12S1 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and 1 unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown individuals. Assuming 2 contributors, given the low likelihood ratios calculated, the results are inconclusive to whether Fotis Doulos could be a contributor to the DNA profile from item 12S1. Michelle Traconis is eliminated as a contributor to the DNA profile from item 12S1.
And directing your attention now to DNA Supplemental Report number 9. It's my understanding that with the exception of Theodore, the Doulos children, Lauren Almeida, and Pavel Gruimi were eliminated.
That is correct. The low likelihood ratio is calculated. The results are inconclusive whether Theodore Doulos could be a contributor to the profile of 12S1.
State Police Exhibit 100.
Could I just have a moment with counsel? Okay, I apologize.
That's fine.
State Police Exhibit 100, which was identified as 2 swabs taken from the bottom half of the steering wheel and subsequently submitted to Division of Scientific Services as submission number 13. And this is in DNA Reports 1 and 9, Ms. Maydell.
And again, we're talking about hypotheses. Again, you're basing the hypothesis based on a prosecution's theory of a case, right?
No, we base it on the background information of a case and the actual profile itself.
Well, who decides on the hypothesis? You or
I
someone
do,
else?
yes.
You make the
The
determination of
DNA
the
analyst,
hypothesis.
yes.
And you have to read something about a case just to make that hypothesis, right?
You need background information on what the kind of case is, yes, and the pieces of evidence, yes.
Because otherwise, it's not like you're blindly taking a piece of evidence, putting it into a machine, and then coming up with a result without you having subjective input, right?
Correct.
Okay. And just so that I'm clear, I'm going to go back to the issue of, you already testified that what the STR mix is doing is not matching a sample to a particular person or two people or three. It's giving a likelihood of a ratio based on two hypotheses, right?
And how likely that evidence is to occur given hypothesis 1 compared to hypothesis 2.
And when you say likelihood, we're talking about odds, aren't we? Mathematical odds, correct?
Yes.
And so these odds are not based on population numbers either, are they?
No, it's not a frequency estimate, no.
So when we hear large numbers like 10 billion or 4 billion or 150 or 250,000 or 100 billion, we're not talking about other people on Earth, are we?
No, we're not.
Those numbers have nothing to do with populations, correct?
Correct.
And when we talk about skin cell DNA, you refer to that as touch DNA, right?
So the forensic community is trying not to refer to some low-level DNA that might be collected from a surface as touch anymore, because we don't want to imply that someone actually did touch this counter and left their DNA. So we're calling it more trace DNA when it's small amounts recovered from an object or surface.
You are aware, though, that even at least at the time of 2019, the folder, some of the forensic folders from your lab still are using terms like touch in relation to this very case, right?
Well, yes. I mean, that's kind of also just for them to distinguish between when they have a piece of clothing that has bloody areas and then has non-bloody areas. They're just making that notation to say, like, I'm trying to avoid swabbing where the blood is, so this is an area that didn't appear to have a reddish-brown stain, so I swabbed it, the touch area where something might have been touched versus having a body fluid on it.
And if somebody, for example, if I stay away from the word touch and instead use the term skin cells, that would be a better way to describe it, right?
Describe?
The word touch DNA.
Yes, I mean, touch DNA, yes. If you're saying someone touched something, you would get skin cells there, yes.
But if, let's say, I don't know, a police officer is walking through a house touching things, chances are that person's DNA might be found on those areas that were touched, right?
It could be, yes.
And if you have a result where you have unknown contributors to the DNA, it could be anybody who walked through that door who isn't separately tested to see if it belongs to them, right?
That's possible, yes.
Who told you to limit your DNA comparison to the children, to Lauren Almeida, to Fotis Doulos and Michelle Traconis, and Pavel Gumieni?
I only can make comparisons to the knowns that are submitted from the agencies, so that's what I do. When I get a known that's submitted by an agency, it gets processed, and that's who I make the comparisons to. I don't ask for additional knowns unless it's for an elimination known, like the situation for a stolen car. We get a swab of a steering wheel. It's a two-person mixture. I don't know if that person who owns the car is on there too, so I would ask for their known. But otherwise, I wouldn't ask for particular knowns unless there was a...
And I don't think you were asked this by the state, so I just want to ask you this. When a swab is submitted to you, it's from some surface has been wiped. Let's set aside for a moment if an actual object or cloth, as you said, item of clothing or something is submitted. We're just talking about a swab.
Okay.
You have not observed how well or how poorly that swab has been administered, correct?
Yeah, if I did not make the cutting of the swab, I did not see it. Therefore, I don't know, what the swab looked like. Do you get the actual cutting, or do you get the chemical or liquid that cutting of the swab was put into? No, I get the actual swab in a tube.
But you get a snip off of, it's like a giant cotton tip applicator, right? So those of us who have had COVID testing know it's like these long sticks with a cotton tip at the end, right?
Correct, yes.
Bigger than a Q-tip that you might find in the hotel bathroom here, right?
So yeah, the forensic biologist would cut that swab, that cotton part off and put it into a tube.
Put it in a tube, then it's given to you.
Correct.
And then you do something where you copy that sample, is that right?
Well, first, we extract it first, get the extract, then we see how much DNA we have, and then we make all those many copies so we can hopefully generate a DNA profile.
And at least as of 2019, when most of this, 2019 and 2020, when most of these comparisons were done, you were able to extract some DNA from as little as 3 cells, right?
I'd have to go back and look at my quant values for all this thing to testify that I did have something that was that small amount.
Is that are any of the reports up there for you to do that?
No.
Well, you used at the time, is it Fusion 6C?
Fusion 6C was the STR kit for 2019 and 20, yes.
And you would take a sample. These are tiny, tiny amounts, right?
There could be tiny, tiny amounts of DNA, yes.
And so the jury has some kind of semblance of size. One cell, as I understand it, is 6.6 picograms in, is that weight or size?
Weight,
Weight.
yes.
And so that we're clear, you've got grams, you have milligrams, you have nanograms, and you go down to picograms, right?
Correct.
And 1 picogram is a trillionth of a gram, right?
1 picogram. Yes,
You should know this
I
is
believe
math,
so.
right?
Yes.
You should know
Yep.
that. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have one cell is 6.6 picograms, we're talking about 6.6 trillionths of a gram, right?
Yep.
And if you're not disagreeing that you can get a sample out of it, as little as 3 cells.
So 3 cells would be 18 picograms, approximately.
Well,
6.6 times
so
3, yes.
more like 20.
So
right?
20 picograms.
Okay.
You might get a few peaks. We target for fusion. We were targeting 500 picograms.
That's your goal.
To get a full correct. Yes.
But if you don't have that, you run the test anyway.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And that's how you get these partial results. Isn't that true?
That is true. Yes.
And that's why in a lot of the places along the loci, it'll show NR, meaning no result.
No result is NR. Yes.
So you then have just a partial DNA, and the machine is still trying to run the ratio, the likelihood ratio, against a partial DNA result, isn't it?
We could try and run a likelihood ratio of a partial. Yes.
And doesn't STR mix actually add in, like, presume, what if there was this extra allele in there? Isn't that part of its whole process?
The whole process is trying to explain what makes up that profile, yes, by how the PCR program works, which is the amplification process. It knows how it works. It is trying to use those, the word I'm looking for, use the way PCR works in order to come up with the best explanation for that profile, whether it be a full profile or a partial profile. It produces these individual components with weights to them.
So this isn't like AI, though, right? It's not artificial intelligence, but it's something like that, right?
No, we know how it works. We know the mathematical process that's being used, the MCMC, as you referred to, and the biological modeling of the PCR reaction. and it's doing all these iterations to best describe that DNA profile.
I understand, but getting back to what I was trying to say is, it is filling in. It says, what if the missing allele was X or